Let's get started. We're starting off a little bit late. Sorry about that, guys. But good afternoon and welcome to the Sage Investor webinar. This is Jen, and I am a co-founder of the Sage Investing Group, along with Maggie and Lana. We hope you guys are having a fabulous week so far. This week, we've been pretty productive. The Sage Group, we are currently revamping our website and we're starting to set our goals for 2022. As you know, the new year is just right around the corner, and before you know it, it's going to be 2022. So we want to make sure that we are planning so that we can hit the ground running when the new year rolls around. And on top of all that, we're also continuing to underwrite deals. This week alone, we have looked at 6 different deals so far. So that's just a little update on us to let you guys know what's going on. Today, we are very excited to have our amazing friends, Aliya and Neil, join us as our guest speakers. They have an amazing, inspiring story that I find very fascinating. And I think we can all learn something from their experience. And that's why we've invited them to join us as guests. But before I introduce them and have them take over the show, I do want to briefly introduce the Sage Investing Group to those of you who are new and are wondering, who the heck are we? So the Sage Investing Group, it was founded and is managed by the 3 of us. There were many factors that brought our group together, but one of them is our common professional background, which is in audit and risk management. So that means prior to transitioning full-time to commercial real estate investing, our job, in short, was to give company stakeholders, such as board members, investors, and in my case, donors, comfort over the reasonableness and the integrity of a company's financial. So we leveraged our combined 35 years of experience in audit, accounting, finance, along with our personal investing background and thousands of hours underwriting over 200 multifamily deals by now and counting, to do what we do now in multifamily syndications. And that is we critically vet our multifamily deals, and we invite our investors to invest with us in the ones that have passed our rigorous vetting process. So that's just a little bit about us. Before we dive further, please take note that the Sage Investing webinar, it is for your education only. And although we all have a CPA background, Sage is not a financial, legal, or tax advisory firm. And also, sometimes we talk about returns in our webinars, and please know that these are just projections or they are historical performance. So of course, past performance and projections are not guaranteed on future deals. Now let's get to the good stuff. I'm really excited to have Aliya and Neil. We met this power couple through our multifamily mentoring group. And as we have gotten to know them over the past years, we have really come to appreciate them and their real estate investing journey, which you'll hear about today, and also their level of transparency every time we talk to them. We really enjoyed their insightful and their thought-provoking questions, which they are never afraid to ask in any setting. And also, we really like their level of diligence that they use as well to assess deals. We have partnered with them on several deals thus far, and we really enjoy working together with them to pull apart the deals and to analyze them together. Aliya and Neil, they are currently full-time real estate investors with about 15 years of experience. They started the real estate investing journey in single-family homes and condo units in the greater Seattle metro area. They were super hands-on, and they managed all aspects of their investments, from the purchase to the renovation to the leasing, along with the not so fun things that comes along the way with property ownership. So for various reasons, which they will touch on soon, the Nylanders have moved their single family portfolio into multifamily. And now, 15 months after they made that decision, they have done just that, and they are now partners in over 2,700 doors, mostly in multifamily, but they also have self-storage, ground-up construction, and mobile home parks investments. And before Aliya and Neil moved into real estate full time, they actually built a digital agency called Live Area Labs, where they designed and built e-commerce websites for Fortune 500 companies. Aliya was the director of operations and Neil was the president and CTO. So these are two very accomplished people, as you can see. We are so delighted to have you both with us today. Welcome, Aliya and Neil.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for having us.
Yeah.
Definitely looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so I heard your story like a little while ago, and like I said, I was very fascinated with how you guys got started, your why for getting started, and so can you just maybe start off by sharing that journey with us, like why you decided to do real estate investing in the first place, how you guys got started, and how you guys get to where you are today.
Awesome. So I'm going to give Neil all the credit because 20 some years ago, Neil started reading, the first Rich Dad Poor Dad book that we all started with. And then for probably 5 years, kind of, just kept reading more books. We read, I think, probably most of his whole series. And it kind of got to the point, and we had friends that also were already doing apartment complexes. They were doing Section 8. And, we were really new. We were in our 20s and we were sort of like, oh, like, how do you do that? Like, that's scary. So we got into playing the cash flow game that Rich Dad Poor Dad has. And we would do like once a month, a big party, and we would play the cash flow game. And so for me, reading isn't my thing. I'm more hands-on individual. So it really helped me understand what real estate was about, how you're looking at it, how you're buying it, how it was a little different than just the Monopoly game of, buying 4, red houses or buying 4 greenhouses and getting a red hotel or something. Right. So after 5 years, fortunately for us, is that my nephew decided he was going to move close to us and go to school. And so I started searching for apartments for him. And though we were very much, our mind was oriented towards single family homes in the greater Seattle area, they were already kind of expensive. And I was interested in apartments and I thought, well, hey, this is kind of interesting. And I bumped into a condominium complex that was for sale. And I was like, whoa, this is amazing. This is super cool. And, we could get into that right now instead of trying to go for a single family home. And my brain was going to, I don't have to mow the lawn. I don't have to worry about, So we ended up buying a condominium first. Obviously condominiums have HOA dues and there's other issues, but that actually started the ball rolling to like the very next year. We ended up buying 2 studio units. It was a 1-bedroom first and then 2 studio units, mainly because we were thinking about buying a 2-bedroom. And I noticed that like for the price of the 2-bedroom, I could actually buy 2 studios, and then understanding rent, we could actually get more rent by having 2 studios than buying 1 2-bedroom. So literally on the same day, we bought 2 studios. And that was the beginning of our portfolio for a long time. It was only 3, condominium complexes. We did the Rich Dad Poor Dad, where it was literally 1.25 miles from our house. So every day we were passing it. And it allowed us to really cut our teeth on, leasing and what we needed to be concerned about. And I didn't have to worry about all the other stuff. And I joined the HOA board. So literally for 10 years, I was on the HOA boards. They were different complexes, which was really helpful. I didn't realize where we would be going next into multifamily, because it's been great experience being on those boards and understanding, how an apartment complex works.
And I'd say that was a really, really good start for us. So again, you go back to Rich Dad Poor Dad, you just go through like chapter 3, and it's all about just doing things local and just having things within your backyard, because the last thing that we wanted to do is delegate to somebody else. The whole point of the exercise was to get smart on real estate. I mean, we didn't know so much. We could write books on what we didn't know, but we knew but a studio or a 1-bedroom is very approachable, and you can just like kind of wrap your arms around it, and you can go to Nolo and you could download a lease form, and you can just like kind of talk to 1 or 2 friends and you can figure some things out. So for us, it was the perfect first step to really not only figure out like, do we really want to do this, what are some of the issues that are going to come with this? What does it feel to own it? But also, is this something that we're going to enjoy in the long term? And the good answer is we learned a heck of a lot.
Yeah.
But we also really figured out that we enjoy working on things together, because it's one thing to have a piece of paper and say, well, we might want to buy this condo or I'm sorry, studio and bring it down. But it's another thing working 12-hour days, doing a renovation and doing all the painting and doing all the trim and replacing water heaters when you made a commitment that the tenant's going to move in 72 hours and you're still halfway done, so you have to love it. You have to find out if you're going to love being hands-on like that. And the good answer
this show has to be more than a half hour to talk about all the stories. That's for sure.
Yeah, we got a lot.
But kind of speeding up the process is that over then really 14 years, we purchased at the height of the market, everybody. So 2008. So that first condo took almost 10 years to kind of get back into the positive.
Hey, we timed that perfect.
I know, totally. Yeah. So we learned a lot, but one of the things that I would say is that we looked at 401ks, and yes, there was, sort of matching programs, and they only kind of matched up to whatever, $5,000 a year, et cetera. And so for us, it was like, and there was restrictions. The companies that Neal had worked with and I worked with, they basically said, hey, here's your 10 choices of mutual funds that you can choose from in your 401k. And that really kind of frustrated me because they weren't producing very well. And if I wanted to find something that produced, I had to absolutely go with, like European or Asian at that time in order to guarantee that I could make any money. So it got frustrating. And so what we decided to do was, if we were going to be contributing at that time $15,000 a year towards our 401k, and we were saving more money on the side in general, is we decided that forget it, we're going to make real estate our 401k, and we can then be in control of that. And so that's really what we started seeing. So even though we bought at the height, and it was scary, I'm not going to lie, is that at the real height, we had those low rents. And, but we got in knowing that if something like that happened, we had a reserve. So we purposely built a reserve in our process. And that reserve ended up being about $2,000 a month that we had to contribute for 3 years to keep those single families afloat, right? So that's kind of scary. And so every time I would be paying it on that monthly basis, I was basically sitting there saying, okay, it's okay. The stock market goes down just like this, and we have to wait for it to go up. So we kept, putting that money in and putting that money in. Eventually the market went up, the rates for the rental went up. And that's actually where the next piece kind of comes into it. Our portfolio ended up being 9 properties. 4 of them being condominiums. One was a covered 45-foot boat slip that was in a condominium association as well. And then the rest were single family homes. And in that process, we now had a pretty large portfolio. And after 14 years, we had over about $1 million worth of equity, which was incredible. But we were getting like $25,000 a year, like in our pocket.
Yeah, this was
after all of the expenses and everything.
This was the ridiculously frustrating thing, is to just, again, Seattle is just like San Francisco or other hyper appreciation markets where on paper we're crushing it. We're making money left over, like hand over fist. But at the end of the day, you can't take that to the bank. And as we're looking at a lifestyle of, not giving all of our time away to W-2s, basically the answer is how are we going to hit financial freedom? And all of a sudden, like these light bulbs went off, just saying, hold on, we literally have a portfolio of 9. We're tapped out. Like this is taking so much time. And so now the answer is like, hold on, we have 7 figures worth of income here. And you're telling me that I'm only taking like cash on cash is 26K. I mean, sure, depreciation, appreciation are there, but you got to be kidding me. There's got to be something else. And so that's when we started just like looking for alternate paths.
And what's funny about that is, so, a couple of years ago, before we actually did the full conversion of our whole single family portfolio into multifamily, is that we reread the 20th edition of Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I highly recommend everybody to go back and read, because this time there's tons of questions. And Neil and I read them separately and then came together with a nice glass of wine and discussed, our issues, our vulnerabilities, and what we wanted to get and what things triggered. And that really moved us forward into the next realm of multifamily, because believe it or not, there's like one line in that book that basically says, yeah, I want you to do all these single family homes and stuff, but then you do multifamily. It's like one line, one line, right?
Robert Cusack was so subtle.
He was so subtle in it.
Yeah.
And it was like interesting. And so, when we started looking at this, it was like, hey, if we actually took all that equity, and this is then now talking about multifamily, is that, and especially syndications, which we went into trying to do multifamily ourselves. And it was like, if we bought in our own area, it'd be like buying an 8-plex for $4 million and still having a cap rate of like 2.3 or 2.6, still not working. So we figured, what's wrong with this? Went to a bunch of conferences and started learning about syndications. And that's when it was like, bing, like, holy crap, you're telling me that we can be a limited partner. We don't have to do very much work anymore. We can take this money and you're going to get us, an 8% pref and possibly a 10% or more cash on cash return, which meant then where we were getting $25,000 a year for our $1 million, we were now going to be getting $100,000 a year in cash instead.
Plus an equity pop at the end, plus lots of depreciation. So yeah, we're diving into pros and cons, but the theme of the conversation was literally just being tapped out on single family homes. And it just hit a point of no scale. It was really frustrating.
Yeah, Aliya and Neil, I remember you guys were also telling me not to scare people off, because I know like a lot of people, they enjoy investing in the single family because they have more control, which you mentioned earlier. But, not to scare anybody off, but like, what were some of the things that you had to deal with as a single family?
Well, so how about that? Let me just talk about like some of the pros and cons of single family, just because, again, we really enjoyed that part. And again, my wife is too humble to say this, but at the end of the day, she is a very handy person. She is most happy with like a Milwaukee or like a DeWalt in her hands. And so I could regale you with funny stories about, water heaters breaking in the middle of the night and Aaliyah jumping up for joy saying, "Oh my God, this is fantastic. I can buy a blowtorch because I wanted to learn how to sweat copper pipes." Meanwhile, I'm like, "Oh my God, you gotta be kidding me." So, I mean, look, so let's just.
He's the tech dude, not the tool dude.
I do software. I don't do hardware. We talked about this. So here's what it comes down to. Like, what I really like with single family is like, if you want to be hands-on, or if it's like something that you enjoy doing. And actually, like, the more we were doing it, the more as a husband and wife team, we really enjoyed doing that part. The other thing is single family is great if you want to change time for money. In other words, like when we were in our early 30s and we were both working really, really hard and just trying to figure out our career. Yeah, we had a little bit of money to work with, but it wasn't like big, massive nest eggs. And so it was a really good avenue for turning time into money. And so that's something that we really enjoy doing. And the last thing I really like about single family is it's a simple concept, really. There's not a ton of moving parts. The liability is well understood. Everyone kind of has like this concept because everyone has lived somewhere, right? I mean, and so there's a ton of resources out there between NOLO and Bigger Pockets. You're gonna get your question answered. So for me, like, what I really liked about it, was that it was all contained. The con for single family homes, at least for us, because like I said, we wanted to be hands-on and we wanted to learn. The point of the exercise was to get better at real estate, get smarter, ladder up. And so if you do that, it really has to be local. And for us in Seattle, or for those in hyperinflation markets like San Francisco or New York or Austin or things like that, if you're going to be managing, if you're not going to relegate control and you're not going to fly to these properties, it has to be local. And that really constrains the shopping that you can do. And so here it felt as though, yeah, we could find some deals, but they weren't great deals. And like we were saying earlier, like again, 7 figures of income, and all we're doing is turning around $26,000. Well, that's just because Seattle's appreciation is so crazy. Cap rates are just like completely off here. And so like, if you're going to do it, you just don't expect to get any cash flow. And that's just how you're going to have to move it forward. So one of the main cons on single family, at least in our
area,
was, in order to play the game that we wanted to play, it has to be local. And so you just don't count on cash flow. Appreciation was great. Like for a long-term play, it was all fantastic.
So if you're doing a W-2, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and you don't need that extra money to live off of, and you're just going to be putting it into a savings account, the equivalent, then going for some place that has that, then it's not a problem. You just want to basically break even. You want to make sure that, the depreciation works to your advantage, all of those extra bonuses. And you're looking at for the long haul, which we were looking at for the long haul. This was our 30-year retirement plan, was to invest in these things. So though we had that huge high and the dip, we still, knew that was going to happen in this process. But the difference was in multifamily, after we started looking at it, and we were like, hey, we really want to retire on this. And this game doesn't seem to be playing the way that we thought it would, which was having that cash coming in. And so for us, which we're now basically sort of semi-retired, is that we now have that income, the equivalent of our salaries, coming in on a regular basis through what we chose to do. So so it was taking the leap of faith. I mean, I will absolutely tell you, I'm a risk taker. And in this case, I was the one holding us back, right? Because in my background is, my dad we moved lots of times in my life, wasn't military. He lost his job, or he would, he'd get a new job or would do whatever. And so my mindset was, I need to pay it off. And then have it all outright. And that's the way to do it. So the concept, and that's what we were going for. We were almost completely, had paid off those mortgages in those properties. I was scared. So there was an internal piece there that was going on that prevented me from going into multifamily, because it, to me, scared me more of like, it's out of state. We're not in control. I like to be in control, and how do I guarantee that they're really doing what they said they're going to be doing? And that's, I think, where we then really started meeting other people, meeting other operators, doing due diligence, going and seeing these things, and start realizing like there are good operators and there's some sort of okay operators. And you start realizing that people just like you in single family homes start knowing those fixers and flippers, they can spot it in an instant. Well, operators in multifamily can spot it in an instant. And so now you're really getting the opportunity to, get into much larger deals, than what you would have been able to as a single family.
Yeah. And and I'll just say two more things about single family homes, just because, again, we did it for a really long time, and not only did we enjoy it, there like two other lessons learned that I'll just throw in along the way. So the first one is, there's a ton of books on how to buy a house, and you can go to seminars and webcasts, and they all talk about like, buy a house with no money down. And so everything's about just getting the deal. It's not as easy to find like what you actually do on day two. Like, congratulations, you have the thing. So now what are you actually going to do with it? And I think the lesson learned for us is that, the deal is easy, but tenants are tricky. And tenants are, especially with single family homes, like when you don't have a property manager, or you don't have someone who's managing things, and you want to learn, you really have to lean in and really show up and realize that it is a people business that you're gonna be working with. And here, the number one thing that I can say about that is just to genuinely be authentic. When we first started interacting with tenants, and someone would show up for a showing and they would say, well, how many homes do you have? And I was like, well, I don't know, maybe we should sound official. So I was like, well, we have several properties here in the Seattle area. And at the end of the day, after doing this for a few years, what I realized is, like, when you're doing showings, tenants actually like dealing with mom and pop shops. And and once they actually have a one-on-one relationship with the landlord, man, they'll bend over backwards because now it's not this big company and they're just like, well, I scuffed the baseboard, I don't care. It's actually, no, this is Neal and Aaliyah and that's their property. Wow, I really need to take care of this. So again, for anyone who's thinking about doing single family homes and is just like going to get into that market, my number one answer is just like appreciate the fact that you're in a people business. And when it comes to tenants, just be yourself, just be authentic and proudly just say, nope, this is like my spouse and myself. This is our first property and we're 1 year in and we're really happy and, you know, like just show
and
up
we
and
love
just,
it. And I
yeah.
hope that you love it too. And, you know, that you appreciate this house and like whatever. I mean, there's a whole aspect in the single family side for that. We did for 15 years to the point where funny enough is I just got a text message from one of our tenants who is from Morocco. And he literally out of the blue was like, hey, I was just thinking about you guys and hope you guys are doing great. And so, I mean, you know, there is that rapport that we created. I mean, in that case, that gentleman was with us for 8 years. But, you know, in the multifamily side is that, you know, yes, we're, you know, moving away from that, but, you know, going to baby steps, it's first get in as a limited partner. And maybe that's all you want to do. You know, Neal and I are thinking about going farther. We have general partnered on other deals. We're looking at taking down deals ourselves, but that doesn't mean you have to. I mean, if we were still doing W-2s, I would be completely doing limited partner investing completely. And that would be fabulous. I would just have that opportunity and not have to worry about things. And, you know, gosh, the market, whether it goes up and down with Wall Street, doesn't matter, is that people need some place to live. And apartment complexes are definitely, and storage units and ground up construction and RV parks are all fantastic ways of doing that and still have your W-2 job if you want to, or maybe you want to get into real estate fully into multifamily and start looking for deals yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Thank
All
you
right.
so much. And so I guess, you know, I think we had a few new people that kind of walked in, but that's totally fine. If you guys, I guess, could just kind of like summarize, you know, if you could just start all over again, you kind of mentioned it briefly, being LP on a deal, if you started with multifamily, but if you could start your journey all over again with real estate investing, what would you kind of do differently?
Yeah. So, well, I'll give you my version, and then I'm sure you're gonna add on top of this here. So, I would still absolutely go single family homes, right? So I really like that we learned so much, and quite frankly, all the things that we were doing in single family homes really educated us to the point of when we were talking to operators for multifamily, or even just looking at them. Now, all the vocabulary was preloaded and just some core concepts. I mean, it all applies. It's just done at scale, right? I just wouldn't do it for so long.
Yeah.
So for example, you know, like, do we have to hold a single family portfolio for 10 years? Not really, because like how many years in a row do you have to do something before you really learn those lessons? And, you know, for us, it literally was one of those scenarios that I wish syndications and operators in multifamily were introduced to us a while ago.
Earlier.
I mean, it was literally funny, just again, being in single family homes. I mean, we would go to real estate conferences all the time. And multifamily felt very unapproachable, just because here in the Seattle market, like for some reason, just syndications weren't being advertised as much. I mean, I wish like podcasts like this were actually permeating the air so many years ago. So again, for us, definitely, we still would have started off on that track just because we didn't have so much money. We did a good job of turning time into money. We got in on some markets because real estate markets do. But again, you know, here's just like a great example of like why the heck did we wait so long? So again, Aaliyah talked about right in the beginning, we purchased the studio for $150K, and you know we sold it 10 years later for what was it, $350 or something? Yeah, just make it real simple, right? Well, you know, again, multifamily deals for operators, you know, quite frankly, not all of them do this, but you know, it's not uncommon in a 5-year period to have a handsome return, maybe even doubling your money. Well, you know, in 10 years, you do that twice, that 150 would have turned into 600 as opposed to the 150. And not to mention, for multifamily, there's just some really good tax reasons. We're not even going to go down the tax rabbit hole, but just that would be a separate podcast.
I love tax.
But those tax benefits are real. And those add up as well. So anyway, when you ask what we would do differently, my answer is like, no, I still love single family. For someone who's like young and starting off, I would say, no, dude, do 1 or 2. That's all fine.
Condominium. So, I mean, if you think you're going to move down the multifamily route, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, don't do condominiums, there's HOA dues and blah, blah, blah. But honestly, if you're looking at it for short term, 3 years or whatever, to understand, get on the board, understand how a condo works. It's very similar to multifamily.
Absolutely.
And it's going to give you so much knowledge. I had no clue how easy my lateral shift was going to be because we had condominiums and not single family homes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and then the last thing is you're asking what we would do differently. Like here I keep on saying, well, I love single family. So someone's probably asking, well, then dude, why did you get into multifamily? Like if you love it so much, why are you doing this? Okay, well, let's go back to what we were talking about earlier, which is if you're going to do single family and you're going to be hands-on, you're really constraining your market. And for us being in the Seattle market, it's like being in downtown San Francisco or Austin or like other you can't buy a 1-bedroom for less than 500K around here. It just doesn't cash flow. It doesn't work. So going with multifamily, the management and the operations, it comes with that. And just working with national operators, you're expanding that search nationally. So now you're not just looking at just mediocre deals in the Seattle market. You're opening it up literally to all 50 states. Which ones are going to be performing, which have best path of progress, which have best crimes, best school, best everything. And so topic number one, it just expands this out so that you're not just picking the least of all evils. You're actually looking at a national search for the absolute best thing that's possible. Second thing is the performance. We've already talked about cash on cash return is a completely different game where for us, sure, the appreciation was great, but you can't live off appreciation. And what really came into focus for us was, dollars in the bank are great, but quite frankly, I'm more interested today. One of my lessons learned. What I'm more interested in today is what is your annual cash on cash? Like talk to me about the cash that whatever your wealth is producing. And that's going to be a magic number because that's what's going to drive your financial freedom, So that's the other topic right there.
And I think I would also say, so to just kind of shift the gears just very quickly and minimally is Neil and I now, it's really 20 years, 5 years where we sat on our butts, didn't do anything, right? And
learning.
Learning.
As we should, yes.
But I do think that if we had the confidence at that time and gone, dealt with what our fears were and actually looked for individuals who could help us get through those fears. So I would highly recommend anybody who you can skip over single family and go right into the LP side of a multifamily and do really well.
Absolutely.
And I think that, start asking those questions that are hard inside. Why am I not willing to do this? Why am I not willing to make the next step? What is it that's blocking me from doing that? Is it my past history that when I was a little kid in experience, or is it that I'm just scared in general? Or maybe I don't even know what I'm doing. But once you know that answer, you can remove that roadblock. And when you remove that roadblock, you will start finding that people will be able to come in and start building that confidence. You might even go in on, a multifamily deal with someone else. There are many ways to get in. Some of these deals you can get in for $25,000, $50,000, $7,500 or more, but there's no reason why you can't find an alternative way, even to potentially gather money together. Maybe you and your sister and your brother want together. Well, there are ways that you could then also get into a deal with a smaller quantity, but that's another aspect. But you can look into creating your own LLC that has those members in it. There is lots of ways. So don't ever let it be a roadblock. I wish that I had had more confidence to willing to ask questions and look dumb. If I had been willing to look dumb and ask those basic questions, we likely would have started earlier, because there would have been so many people saying, oh my gosh, that's exactly how I felt. No, it's not that big of a deal. It's much easier. Let me show you how I started. That's the key. Don't let your fear be your roadblock. Move things forward. Know what you want to do and do them. Get out of your own way.
I love it. That's really amazing, Aliya. And I think you've definitely grown from that, because like I mentioned in the beginning, I really love how inquisitive you are. At a lot of our real estate meetings, you're always raising your hand and asking very intelligent questions. So you're
I'm
definitely
not afraid
thinking-
now to look dumb, right? And here's the thing too, is that I realize, I mean, when we're in, you know, in anything, whether it's, you know, with Think Multifamily, with Neal, with the real estate guys, with, you know, Jake and Gino, with all of these places that are all over, Michael DeBlanc, whatever, I'm asking questions. And you know what? I get people in the direct chat on a regular basis go, oh my gosh, thanks for asking that question.
All the time.
You know, that I've had that same question in my mind or whatever. And so I've learned to sort of say, you know what, I'm willing to be the advocate for those people who probably have questions. And so, yes, that I'm the question asker.
All right. Thank you so much. And Maggie, she raised her hand. Do you have a question?
Hi guys, I have a
Hey, Meg.
quick question. Hey, so I'm very curious. You mentioned that Rich Dad Poor Dad have like a really, really tiny disclaimer to go into multifamily. I just wonder, do you have any idea why that is the case? Any thoughts on that?
So the
So
question is like,
why is the case? So, okay, this is my perspective now, 20 years
Mhm.
later, having read the book 20 years ago and 20 years, because if he had talked about multifamily in the beginning, and at that time, 20 years ago, syndication wasn't really around so much, is that it was scary to get in. You did need to have those four single family homes before you could roll it all into an apartment complex or a hotel or whatever. So that perspective was not there at that time, you know, and I do think that, you know, do you want to encourage a bunch of people to get into real estate because it's not that difficult, or do you want to scare them by choosing something really large? And I think everybody looks at like 150 doors, you know, mind blown, right? And so I think that he really is a teacher at heart. I think that's why his first book was that way, is get people interested. That's why he created his cash flow game, so that you can start feeling more comfortable and familiar. And his books do roll into the multifamily down the road. But his point is start small, start close to home, get your experience. And I think that's where I would say, Maggie, is that he wasn't trying to get you into the advanced level class right off the bat. But now that we can look back at it, it was interesting to see that son of a gun, it was there and we just didn't catch it because we weren't ready for that.
yeah, it was subtle and it was in our mind. But again, going back and just like middle of the book is he's walking neighborhoods and finding great deals on just like 1 or 2 bedrooms. Then he goes to quads, and even in his cash flow game, in the rat race, once you get out, I mean, there are no single family homes. It's all buying hotels and commercial real estate. I mean, so again, it's subtle, but you just have to, just after observing it for a little while, just take a step back and say, yeah, okay, he's actually got some breadcrumbs.
He does. So now you can see them and go, oh, he's sneaky. Yeah.
Okay.
Did that answer your question, Maggie?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you. I myself had to read that book twice. The first time it just kind of went over my head. I think I was like in my mid-20s or so, and it went over my head. And then the second time I read it, I was like, you know what? There has to be a way to get started in real estate somehow, some way. And it was just like stepping out of the comfort zone, thinking outside the box, you know, pulling the funds together, the resources together to make that first down payment. So anyways, you got to just read it multiple times. Like the good books, you got to read multiple times to really extract the essence out of them.
Absolutely.
Definitely. And I highly recommend finding people that are doing what you're interested in doing and start meeting with them, having coffee, having dinner. That it was almost for 2+ years of that 5 years that we waited, we were doing that monthly cash flow game with our friends, and it was fun. And it allowed me to ask those questions they were doing Section 8. And that scared me. I was like, whoa, I don't want Section 8, but he was really good at it. He figured it out. And that's where his sweet spot was. And so I guess I would say is you've got to find other people who are doing these things, and you're going to find out they were baby steps. They were doing it there. And I heard this great phrase, and I'm going to absolutely slaughter it, just so you know, because I'm never good at remembering these things. But a friend of mine had wrote, she said, don't judge yourself where I am in the middle when you're at the beginning. Stop judging yourself where I am. I was over there before too, but you look at me and think I have it all figured out. I'm just ahead of you. You need to be a baby in a baby steps. Don't be, criticizing and judging yourself that you're not already an adult. And that was really big because I was definitely doing that. I was looking at them and going, oh, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Don't judge yourself.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think I really resonate with you saying, surround yourself with other people who's ahead of you. Because for us, we started with single family too, but then long before we knew it, we started doing multifamily because we learned from people around us and they were kind of telling us, yeah, go the multifamily route. It's, it makes sense. So we kind of listened and we dug into ourselves and, we started doing multifamily after like a year or two of doing single family. So I definitely agree. Harry Nima he said, you guys are my heroes. So much hands-on knowledge. And he also has a question. Did you ever try to buy single family houses outside of your market? I know some investors who invest in other cash flowing markets, of course, with a property manager.
Okay, so I'll, again, my quick answer on this, yes, absolutely. So I don't expect everyone on the phone to have a perfect map in their head or know the geography of the Seattle area, but there's a tertiary market here called Bremerton. It's about an hour and a half away from downtown Seattle. Quite frankly, it would be a lot closer if we didn't have this pesky salt water in the way. So you literally have to drive down and around to get over there. But as a result of it being an hour and a half away, prices were very different. And so a little while ago, you could buy a 3-bedroom new construction house and it started with a 2. And in the Seattle area, that would start with a 7. And so the market was completely different. And so, yeah, we did basically go in incremental steps. So instead of our backyard, we went an hour and a half away. And here, again, we still wanted to be very hands-on and we still wanted to do it. Because again, cash flow was still very tough on these things and we wanted to be involved in it. Long story short, learned a bunch of lessons on that. Learned about like a little bit of like I don't want to say long distance dealing with things, but when it's not around the corner, that's a little bit tougher. So yes, we have some experience with doing that.
Not out of state. I mean, obviously, so this was an hour and a half from our home. And this was the beginning. Honestly, we did that to figure out, could we do this still on our own? It's only an hour and a half away. But it did get to be a little crazy where it was like, you'd go show the house to someone, set up an appointment, you drove an hour and a half, and then, 5 minutes into the meeting, they'd go, I'm not going to show up. And it was like, I just lost 3 hours of my life, right? So I will say is that experience doing that an hour and a half away allowed me to say, you know what? I can't do this. If we're going to do this, I think that we need to really take the full leap and go into multifamily where there's a property manager on site. There's an asset manager. There's a construction guy. Yeah, there's a maintenance dude.
But let me also answer. But let me also just answer one question really quickly because again, we're probably running out of time. Okay. Let me just go into, did we consider going with an outside property manager? Because it's really easy to find companies that will just basically turnkey properties for you in a bunch of states. We talked to probably 6 different operators for that. But at the end of the day, what really came into our mind was, yeah, we could do that, but we know so much about this. And after running single family homes for a little while, I kind of didn't like the answers that the property manager were giving because it was very obvious. First of all, they were going to charge us an arm and a leg, like 10%. Second thing is they weren't going to treat it as well as we were. And so it just didn't feel right. A lot of people have made tons of money doing this. So I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but for the operators for single family homes that we talk to after doing it ourselves for maybe this is too much of like hubris of pride of ownership or something like that. It was just hard to do the exact same thing that we were doing, turning over a ton of money. And there was always this trade-off of like, yeah, okay, you're saying you're going to make a lot more cash flow, but now the appreciation is like, it just wasn't a perfect fit for us.
So I'm going to move on to a couple of extra questions that are on here. One of them was to talk about the transferring of all of our equity from the single family portfolio into multifamily and storage. And yes, we did. And that's probably another completely different topic because it took us a whole year and we did what's called 1031. It's tax code that allows all of that equity in our single family homes to be rolled into, in this case, forms of it's not into the syndication. You become what's called a tenant in common. And so, that's a whole nother deal. But yes, we rolled all of our $1 million worth of asset into multifamily, and most of those, and that's going to kind of lead into the next question that Jeannie said, is related to our performance. And so we did look at deals that specifically had cash on cash return of a 10% on a yearly basis, because we needed to add up and make our salaries back, which leads into, do we still have W-2s? Are we fully retired? Well, we do not have W-2s. I don't call ourselves fully retired because I'm too much of an action-oriented person. So I would say I'm semi-retired because I don't think I'm ever going to be able to stop. So that's not going to work. But from the perspective of, are we free of a W-2? Yes. Can we live off the money that we are getting in from our multifamily? Yes, we can. Is it to the extreme level yet of, whatever, 300K a year? Not yet, but we already, with our Excel spreadsheets that we have, we are literally going to be able to reach that within a 2-year time frame. So that's, for us, we are looking at the cash on cash return, the IRR, the equity, and Neil, you can probably answer that one exactly. But just to let you know, Jeannie, is that most of the things that we're doing we're on a limited partner. We have done general partner things where there's extra percentages that you get from a general partner, bringing in capital and things to that extreme. But Neil, why don't you answer that one, because you're the deal guy.
Okay, so yeah, so yeah, Jenny was asking about, like, where did you pencil in IRR, cash on cash, equity multiples when we're underwriting deals or really evaluating deals? And then we can talk about performance. Okay, so Aaliyah already alluded to, well, let me talk on 2 things really quickly. When Jen was kind enough to introduce us, she mentioned that we had a few different types of commercial real estate. And so multifamily, storage, ground up construction, et cetera. We really love storage. I love everything about storage, but here's the problem, is that you can't go into a storage facility and add curb appeal, add granite countertops, add stainless steel appliances and boost the rent. It's a utilitarian play. It doesn't work that way. The way to make money in storage is through adding maybe like propane tanks, doing retail, and like adding more units. And that takes years to actually see anything out of that. So if you say, hey, I've got a little bit of money and I want to put it into a deal, storage, I love the concept because all those tenant problems I was talking about kind of go away. Yeah. But you just can't get a quick cash on cash. So anyway, after looking at a bunch of types of commercial real estate, multifamily is unique in the fact that you can immediately on day one, like when you buy the property, trucks roll in, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, beautiful Moen faucets, up the rent, and like within a year, things are fine. So here, what we were optimizing for is, hey, look, we were wringing our hands saying, like, we had a bunch of money, we're only making 25K. This is ridiculous. So can I make 10%? That was really our
That's the cash on cash, 10%.
Yeah, and
the equity multiplier usually around 2% to ask her.
2x.
And the IRR we don't so much worry about.
Yeah, I mean, so IRR is good for benchmarking one deal against the other. Clearly, if you see something that's like a 17 to 20 that has undivided attention, and what that typically means is that there's a cash out refi in year 2, and that's going to push money up earlier. But at the end of the day, is that going to be the decider? In other words, are we going to make metric-driven decisions? Well, I'm going to say that's going to guide it. But here, my encouragement to everyone who's on the phone is to say, metrics are nice, and it's easy to fall in love with a spreadsheet. But quite frankly, it's still a people business. And so here, this is where having a relationship with the operator to say, tell me a little bit more about your deals. Tell me about what you've been doing. Tell me about how your values are driving the decisions that you're making as a company. Again, Jen was kind enough to say things about us. And like, this is the reason that we were happy to talk with Sage, is like, we really resonate with the values that they have and the direction of our company and things like that. So, again, I would just say for everyone who's thinking about just like getting in to multifamily, just get to know your operator really, really well. Just because there's going to be bumps in the road. No one can predict what's going to happen with interest rates. No one can predict what's going to happen with COVID. But what you can predict is how the operators that you're interacting with are going to react as a result of spending some time having coffee with them and understanding, just like, what do you think that you'd be able to enjoy working with them for a little while?
Okay. So I love this next question here is, what are your thoughts on using leverage to invest in syndication deals? Example, HELOCs, cash out, refis. Okay. So, I would say that, so we did do a cash out refi on our personal residence to buy our first single family condominium.
To get in the game.
To get in the game. But we were already very budget oriented. I'm a tracker. So, you know, one of the things to me is it's not about what can I handle today? Do I have that cash in hand in a special account to deal with if the market turns again? Can I still pay my mortgage, my rent, etc.? So first off, I would say is make sure that you have some form of backup before you do anything with a HELOC or a cash refi. Because once you do that, you know, everything's not always happy dappy. You need to be prepared for the down. So if your HELOC has got a great percent on it, and you already know that the cash on cash return, and I'm going to say not in year one, because I'm going to tell you now that we have been in this, is that year one, the operators have really good intentions and they don't always get what they say in year one, because there's going to be hiccups that they find that they just would not have known about until they start the deal. So make sure that year one, if you're going to use a HELOC, that you can handle not getting all of that money in on a regular basis to pay off your HELOC. So assume that you will have that HELOC money in there for at least a year without performance. And then year two, you will start being able to do that. So you want to weigh that odd. So I'm cautious with that perspective. The cash out refi is going to be a little easier because you're going to be able to know how much can you really afford on your mortgage right now. And if you can take some money out and maybe lower your mortgage payment or make it the exact same and take cash out, I think that's a better way. You already know how to handle your mortgage. So if you know how to handle your mortgage and you can handle it at that rate that you're at right now and a little bit more, go for it. But the HELOC, I'd be very careful of. That would be my perspective.
Yeah, if it's tight.
If it's tight, don't bank on the cash on cash return for the first year or two to be paying off that HELOC. So remember that if your HELOC's at 6%, and maybe the first year you're not getting the 6%, because if you read those documents, they say I'm going to do an 8% pref. But if they don't do 8% pref the first year, they tack on that rest on the second and third year moving forward. So you might get a pref of like 3%, 4%, even though that's not what they thought they were going to get. That might be what actual happens. Will you get the 2x at the end of your deal of 5 years? Sure. Likely, yes. Will you make that cash on cash return that they are saying that is the average? Likely, yes.
But the banks want their money now.
Banks want the money now. So just remember what you're doing with this HELOC and be careful of it.
That's awesome.
So anyway, that's where we are. Does anybody else have any other questions? And yes, Wagner, cash is king.
Yeah, no, I love that about you guys. Like I told you guys in the beginning, we love that they're very transparent people. They will tell it to you as it is. So that's, you know, you guys all asked really great questions. Thank you so much for all of that. So if no one else has any other questions, we want to thank Aliya and Neil for captivating our audience today. We thank everybody for staying on till the end. Typically it's a 30-minute webinar, but it's almost an hour, which is totally fine because they dropped a lot of good information for all of us. And I hope we all learned something. So if anyone wants to get in touch with Aliya and Neil, I have their email addresses on the screen. You guys can take a screenshot or write it down. And we can also share that along with the recording and our notes from the webinar today to you in an email that we're going to send out later today.
Yeah, please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to do a Zoom call and discuss more things that you might have questions with. We're an open book. We're going to tell you it like it is. So, you know, feel free to ask. We're happy to tell you what our experience was. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much, Sage team, for inviting us.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for your time. We enjoy talking to you every time we get a chance. So thank you so much. And thank you to everybody.
All right. Push your boundaries, everyone. Push your boundaries.
All right. Bye, guys.
All right. Thank you. Bye.